Let's see what happens here. So, as was said, I'm Luka, I'm from Ljubljana. I wanted to say I'm from a small town, capital of a tiny country, kind of slightly too posh for the Balkan and kind of too scruffy for Western Europe, but take it with a grain of salt. So I'm a computer musician since early teenage years, and digital networks are my second home, essentially. And I'm interested in how digital technology and networks change the way people engage with art, specifically music. So to preface a little bit this lecture, what I will present now here comes from a bit of research which was kind of caused by a shock when Bandcamp was twice sold to somebody else, to some companies, and especially the second one was kind of like shocking in a way, like because Bandcamp is supposedly kind of like a fair music marketplace. And so this is kind of like research goes a little bit back as well. Yeah. So let me start with a quote. Technological self-determination is at odds with the natural imperatives of tech businesses. They make more money when they take away our freedom to speak, our freedom to live, our freedom to connect. So this is a quote, this is what wrote Canadian-British writer and activist Cory Doctorow in last year in an article which was titled TikToks and Enshittification. So Doctorow uses this term, enshittification, to colorfully describe a phenomenon otherwise known as platform decay. And web platforms have a bit of a history, so maybe it's not too wrong to start with the emergence of Web 2.0. Some people know this history, maybe some of you don't. So 25 years ago, author and designer Darcy DiNucci coined the term Web 2.0 in her prophetic article, Fragmented Future, where she wrote that she envisions the web not as screenfuls of text and graphics, but as a transport mechanism, the ether through which interactivity happens. It will appear on your computer screen, on your TV set, your car dashboard, your cell phone, handheld game machines, maybe even your microwave oven. However, 5 years later, in 2004, in their opening remarks to the first Web 0.0 conference, John Battelle and Tim O'Reilly outlined their definition of the web as platform. So the web as platform as one where software applications are built upon the web as opposed to upon the desktop. So the unique aspect of this migration, they argued, this was in the context of libertarian, growth-obsessed serial entrepreneurs, is that customers are building your business for you. They argued that the activities of users generating content in the form of ideas, texts, videos, and pictures could be harnessed to create value. So such incentive, harnessing users for profit, naturally caused a desire to capture users and customers inside the platforms, keep them there as long as possible, to lock them in, which increasingly led to creation of enclosures of otherwise beneficial, open nature of the web. So beneficial even to those same platforms. So for example, the interoperability between MySpace and Facebook, maybe some of you remember MySpace. So this interoperability was instrumental in success of Facebook in the early years, until it wasn't profitable anymore and interoperability was abandoned by Facebook. So this incentive of enclosure meant creation of walled gardens on the web, also known as silos. So in context of technology, a walled garden is a closed platform or closed ecosystem, a software system wherein the carrier or service provider has control over applications, content, and/or media, and restricts convenient access to non-approved applicants or content. Today's non-internet examples of walled gardens are Apple's operating system, Google and Apple's app stores, and Amazon's Kindle, among others. So these are the most glaring examples, probably. So this walled garden is in stark contrast to an open platform, wherein consumers generally have unrestricted access to applications and content. This is how Wikipedia defines walled garden. So a silo is a walled garden in the context of web. A centralized website, like actually most social media, typically owned by a for-profit corporation that stakes some claim to content contributed to it and restricts access in some way. So for example, requiring a user account specific to that site to use it, and allowing users to interact on the site only with others with accounts on the site, and restricting users' ability to import or export their content, comments, or tags. So this process of manipulation, luring users into the platform using existing interoperability, open standards and public protocols, and then raising walls to enclose their activity, monitor behavior, sell user-generated content, of course raises questions of openness and autonomy on the web. So such sneaky walled gardens incited niche counter-movements and pockets of resistance. And while the so-called old web never disappeared, alternatives to closed silos were being tested on the internet, usually in the open, all the time. So in 2008, Evan Prodromou launched Identica, a microblogging platform not unlike Twitter, and wrote, so in 2008, the goal here is autonomy. You deserve the right to manage your own online presence. If you don't like how this site works, you can take your data and the source code and set up your own server or move your account to another one. And somebody else commented on this launch kind of message. Ultimately, this means federation. I put a customized version of the software on my server, you put one to your liking on yours, we both get friends on our local copy and any other versions around the web, and everyone can communicate with each other, just like we were using the same service from the same provider. And another example of this resistance to the silos of Web 2.0 is IndieWeb.org, which started in 2011 and still is kind of running. And it's a community of independent and personal websites connected by open standards and based on principles of owning your domain and using it as your primary online identity, publishing on your own site first and then optionally elsewhere, and owning your content. and Wired called them hackers who want to jailbreak the internet. And another interesting example of resistance to siloed social networks is so-called digital gardening. In 2015, Mike Caulfield published an essay titled "The Garden and the Stream, a Techno-Pastoral." For him, digital gardening is about a different way of thinking about our online behavior around information, a behavior that accumulates personal knowledge over time in an explorable space. The main argument was that we have become swept away by streams, the collapse of information into single-track timelines of events, only concerned with self-assertive, immediate thoughts that rush by us in a few moments. The streams only surface the zeitgeisty ideas of the last 24 hours. They are not designed to accumulate knowledge, connect disparate information, or mature over time. So the garden is our counterbalance. Gardens present information in a richly linked landscape that grows slowly over time. Everything is arranged and connected in ways that allow you to explore. The garden helps us move away from time-bound streams and into contextual knowledge spaces. And writing 5 years later about the history of digital gardening, it is actually designer and anthropologist Maggie Appleton who wrote beautiful illustrated and researched article, History of Digital Gardens. And she credits Caulfield for the idea. But also, among other things, she writes, "Gardening is about claiming a small patch of the web for yourself, one you fully own and control. This patch should not live on the servers of corporate silos like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. None of these platforms are designed to help you slowly build and weave personal knowledge. Most of them actively fight against it." So under the flashy surface of the web is its backing structure, the internet. Plethora of communication protocols, databases, and servers with unique systems. So from these depths of text-based terminal user interfaces comes a niche scene of tinkering, hacking, chaos playing, sysadmin knowledge sharing, programming and script writing communities. They are consciously rejecting the flashy, JavaScript-heavy, growth-seeking monsters of corporate-backed web platforms, and instead leaning into ideas of perma-computing and degrowth, creating tiny and light systems of service with goal to stay small. Servers are small, with fewer resources, and communities are small on purpose, rejecting ideas of growth and scale as goals. So to quote communitywiki.org, it's small because it's built for friends, and friends of friends. It's called SmallNet, and it doesn't have to scale to millions of people, because those millions should build their own local small networks. So it's also somehow under the surface of the web, where evolution of previously mentioned Evan Prodromov's first iteration of federated social network resulted in ActivityPub, which is a protocol and open standard now at W3C, and which is currently the backbone of something which is called the Fediverse. A beautiful rallying cry against the centralized, corporate-run platforms against the big tech. So Fediverse is a collection of social networking services that can communicate with each other, share, boost, like, post and other media, live video, audio, and images. An interesting metaphor used in TechCrunch article was that the Fediverse is kind of like the film Being John Malkovich, in that there are a lot of actors, but they all kind of look alike. It's also a bit of manifesto. Power to the people, your data, your rules, and also like the OG internet, fostering small, tight-knit communities where you can actually have meaningful conversations instead of screaming into the void. Have it your way. If your perfect blend of spices doesn't exist, you can make your own. The apps, the software, like for example Mastodon or PeerTube today, and the protocol ActivityPub are open source. The Fediverse flexibility allows users to customize their experiences, from interface design to functionality, and developers can play, create, and share modification. It could be said that this open adaptability and interoperability ensures that the Fediverse evolves with its users, staying relevant and responsive to their needs, among others, needs for autonomy. So in something called Declaration of Digital Autonomy, Molly DeBlanc and Karen M. Sandler wrote in 2020, "We demand a world in which technology is created to protect and empower those who are impacted by it. Our technology must respect the rights and freedoms of those users. We need to take control for the purpose of collectively building a better world in which technology works in service to the good of humankind, protecting our rights and digital autonomy as individuals." Declaration called for principles for ethical technology. It must be in the service of the people and communities who use it and are impacted by it. It needs to be designed to empower individual and collective digital action. People must have the ability to study and understand technology in order to decide whether using it as is the right choice. Building technology must be done to respect the rights of people, including those of privacy, open communication, and the safety to develop ideas without fear of monitoring, risk, and retribution. To paraphrase programmer Ariadne Connell, a silo can never provide digital autonomy to its users. By their very nature of being centralized services under the control of the privileged, silos are not beneficial, especially if you look at the power structures imposed by them. By design, they are incapable of lifting others up. Instead of using them, we should choose to participate in power structures which value our communal membership rather than value our ability to generate revenue and profits for shareholders. So Cory Doctorow describes the process of platform decay to kind of return to where we started. So he writes, first, new platforms. So this is from a book the Internet Con published last year. First, the new platforms are good to their users as a way to attract more of them, and they offer useful products and services at a loss, so they don't profit from it. Once users are logged in, the platform then offers access to the user base, to suppliers, those business customers, to claw back all the value for themselves. So the users and vendors are locked in. High switching costs, including network effect, prevent either users or suppliers from leaving, even when alternatives technically exist. The platform no longer has any incentive to maintain quality. It decays and ultimately dies. So Cory Doctorow calls this enshittification. And it is a seemingly inevitable consequence arising from combination of the ease of changing how a platform allocates value, combined with the nature of a two-sided market, where a platform sits between buyers and sellers, hold each hostage to the other, raking off an ever larger share of the value that passes between them. So here's the kind of like last part, which is about radical digital autonomy for musicians. So I'm kind of like putting, let's imagine, or let's kind of like put forward, in a way, somehow radical premise. An artist needs nothing more than A, a community of hearts, their audience, including both fellow artists and non-artists, and B, basic sustenance with a place and tools to work. So that's kind of like an idea. So the disruption proposed here by Be Your Own Platform Toolkit, which is kind of, I guess, research that comes from this, that I explained in the beginning, is that satisfaction of these needs, so this artist's success, in context of digital communication networks, should not depend on centralized corporate, faceless, siloed, walled, vulture capitalist, profit-maximizing and unaccountable and unethical platforms, but rather via self-hosted, federated, decentralized digital technology with the goal of maximizing autonomy, not profit. So I already mentioned when Bandcamp was sold to SongTrader in October 23 last year, the music journalist Anil Prasad wrote an angry Facebook post which they ended with an advice to musicians. You may want to focus as well on your own platform. In other words, your website, which so many of you have forsaken. No one can take your website away from you. They can't pull that rug from under your feet. So go back and rebuild your own web presence. And he signed off with a hashtag Be Your Own Platform. So that's where this kind of, I guess, title comes from. Okay. So, paraphrasing Molly White. Molly White is a cryptocurrency critic, technology researcher, and software engineer. She wrote a longer article, and in this one, I'm paraphrasing from it. In the old days, the web was cobbled together blogs and live journal pages, written by people who felt authentic, who weren't trying to cultivate a persona as an influencer or a thought leader, trying to build a brand or monetize their audience. There was more of a neighborhood feeling, where everyone was a possible friend. Fewer and less intrusive ads, less engagement farming, less surveillance, fewer paywalls. But the thing is, none of this is gone. Nothing about the web has changed that prevents us from going back. If anything, it's become a lot easier. We can return. Better yet, we can restore the things we loved about the old web while incorporating the wonderful things that have emerged since. Developing even better things as we go forward, we can have a different web. So, slowly wrapping up, at the core of Be Your Own Platform Toolkit are a few simple ideas, kind of like for, let's say, musicians or artists in general in the digital space. Focus on your own website with your own domain. Communicate through email lists. Find your people through federated and decentralized networks of cooperation. Ask for donations and subscriptions. For example, Austin Kleon in Show Your Work book writes, "Nothing beats owning your own space online. A place that you control, a place that no one can take away from you, a world headquarters where people can always find you. Your website doesn't have to look pretty, it just has to exist." Don't think of your website as a self-promotion machine, think of it as a self-invention machine. And I think today, when art without its physical manifestation isn't complete fantasy, but actually quite the opposite. We can make art that doesn't have physical manifestation. There isn't really any reason for basing your income on sale of artificial scarcity. In other words, with accessibility of digital technology and existing internet capabilities, selling countable virtual objects makes absolutely no sense anymore. So this is a proposition, or seemingly a possibility that looks good for musicians or artists, digital artists. To instead ask for support from the community is like passing the hat for the street performer. How about putting donation buttons on your website, asking for help via email lists and federated networks, asking for recurring donations or offer subscriptions and special membership projects where audience become part of art making, a part of production team, with a sense of community and not monetization. So in conclusion, a set of patterns. Take your time, play with tech, own your data, find your people, cooperate, invest in the sustainable, learn in public, use open source, self-host, hearts not views, ask for help, avoid vulture capital. So the idea is to be autonomous, an inseparable part of a community, to be your own platform with